Hello, and welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited for today. Welcome back to Adobe Live. I see so many familiar faces in the chat. It's good to see all of you folks. My name is Voodoo Val, and I am going to be your host for this wonderful segment. And I am joined by my new friend, Jay. How are you, Jay?
I'm great, Val. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. I am so excited for this broadcast. I've been looking forward to it. Before we jump into a little bit about you and what we're going to be doing today, I'd like to just mention a few points for our audience. If you folks are over on YouTube, please come over to Behance. That is where I'm going to be reading the chat. That's where we're going to be able to funnel your awesome questions over to Jay and all that good stuff. It's where the party's happening. Welcoming Gareth and Tony, Annika, Oliver, John. It's good to see all of you folks. If you have any questions, post them because we're going to be diving into some pretty epic content for today. So, Jay, we've heard how you are, but now why don't you tell us a little bit of what you do? What are you all about? What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? The best pizza? All the real questions here. I got to know.
Well, I am currently a production designer at Pixar Animation Studios. I've been there for 20 years this year, which is incredible to me because I've never held a job longer than that. But I did spend 3 years at Lucasfilm working on the prequels. So that's why I'm here today. Because, Star Wars basically gave me everything I have. It motivated me to learn to draw, to design, and to get into movies. And it was the only thing I ever really wanted to do in my life. So it's a really important thing to me.
I agree. I've developed a reputation for myself here, and I am finally among a dueling Star Wars person right now. So I get it, man. I get it. Well, so what are we going to work on today? What is the plan for our project?
The plan is to just draw, let it come to us. But I want to focus on the Millennium Falcon because it is the sweetest ship to me in the Star Wars universe. I fell in love with that thing as a kid, and I think there's a way to evolve it and kind of redesign it. So let's do that today.
All right, I'm pumped for this. Millennium Falcon is also near and dear to my heart, as are a lot of other Star Wars ships and things. But I don't think you can go wrong with the Millennium Falcon. We've got some folks in chat saying that they're super excited to be here. Everybody's welcoming everyone else. We've got some Star Wars fans in the chat. I'm waiting for our good friend General Kenobi. We have someone named General Kenobi who pops in the chat every day and just says hello there. So looking for him. But yeah, let's dive into it.
Okay. Well, I've got a kind of a little expose on myself and just my history and how I do things. So let me just get to that real quick. And my name's Jay Shuster, and I grew up loving airplanes and trains and cars and everything, any kind of mode of transportation. My dad was a car designer at GM for 43 years, so that was easy for me. I collected all the Star Wars toys, right? Of course, as we all did. And I dressed up as a Jawa for like 9 years straight.
This is the best photo.
And this, my dad went to GM, got me some LED lights, built this mask for me out of actually a C-3PO mask that's under there. He spray painted it black and then mounted these lights to it. It was super sweet. And kids were freaking out when they'd see me walking down the street.
I'll bet.
And mind you, this is 1978. So, people are freaking out. So this is a shot of me and my family in the family Corvair, the Chevy Corvair that my dad just loved. That's me over to the left with my mom there. I'm about 2 years old. Only about 4 years out from, seeing Star Wars and it changing my life. But my dad would take us to these open houses at GM every weekend. Almost, it seemed like every weekend we'd go to GM, there's something going on. And on this one open house, in '77, the year the first film came out, of course, the guys in the model shop built this R2, this scale R2. And, this was the turning point for me. I was 6 years old. I saw this thing sitting in the middle of this, this show at GM. And this is where I made the connection of what my dad did at GM, designing and building things, to what George was doing out on the West Coast at the time. So that was a huge moment for me. I was like, man, I could do this. I can do that stuff.
It's possible.
And it's possible. Everything's possible. And in the meantime, this guy's collar went on to inspire the F-117, which was also an incredible, moment in aeronautic history. Anyway, so I just absorbed all this stuff. I just poured through all the books, that Joe Johnston's sketches, Ralph McQuarrie's paintings. This was my education right here. And this is the first sketch I ever did. Maybe not the first sketch. This is one of the first sketches I ever, drew of the Y-wing and the X-wings and TIE fighters. I don't know, it's on the back of a bag or something there, but my dad found that a couple of years back, and I'm like, oh my God, it's the Holy Grail. I went on to make cartoons and comic strips, tell my stories with these characters. And this pretty much summarizes my schooling experience here. Report on Apollo 13 in, I think, the 4th or 5th grade. And the teacher was like, what did she say? You only wrote one page. I'm like, what do you mean? If a picture speaks 1,000 words, I got like at least 3,000 words in this thing, because I drew all the time. That's all I did. I wanted to draw my ideas out. That is impressive for a 4th grader too. That is very cool. But yeah, and I just started kind of developing my style through middle school, sci-fi stuff. Of course, lived in Detroit. My dad was a car designer, as I said, so I had to draw cars. So I combined the two, and in college, I started combining these things, sci-fi and transportation. And, I went into product design instead of automotive design. And at Center of Creative Studies in Detroit, where I went to school, it was mostly people in automotive design who went out to Hollywood and got the jobs. But I figured, I'm going to take product design. I'm going to have a more diverse experience in that curriculum than I would in automotive. So yeah, I had jobs like, designing lunch boxes for Thermos. This was an internship actually that this thing happened, but I still just wanted to turn things into spaceships. So I turned this lunch box into a spaceship. I love it. I love it so much. Everything was just a spaceship to me. And then in the time between graduating college and getting out to California, I had a job at Alias doing some software stuff, user tester stuff on digital, paint, a sketch and paint program. I took jobs at video game places, one of which was called Rocket Science. None of them exist anymore. But in 1996, about April or May of 96, the planets aligned for me to drive up to Skywalker, and for my first day on the job. Thank you, Doug Chang. Thank you, David Nakabayashi, and thank you, George Hall. All these people were involved in me getting my job at the ranch that year. So yeah, I worked on the pod racers, which was super sweet because it combined my love of automotive with spaceship, with graphic design. I got to kit bash Anakin's chariot. Oh my gosh. Now this is pod racing. This is good. Now this is pod racing. This thing, it's about 6 inches long or so like that. But, it's just such oh my God, what am I doing? I can't believe what I'm doing here. This is amazing. Worked on Sabalbas, pod racers. This is a shot before we turned those engines 90 degrees and got that sweet X graphic in there. Some interior design, architecture. I was basically Doug's right-hand man for hard surface stuff, ships, architecture, robots, etc. This was on the first episode. Just kind of starting to think about, percolate what the next gen Stormtrooper might look like. And then the two greatest moments in my Star Wars career of those 3 years very short years, was being in the reshoots for the special edition.
Yes.
And you know, you can see that little square at the bottom there. That I'm 2 troopers back in that column of 4 right there.
Oh, it's so cool.
That was a sweet experience. And then also meeting Ralph McQuarrie, which, you know, the man is just amazing. I was saying it earlier. He's dictated everything, you know, how I've gone about, you know, learning to draw, learning to, you know, apply color. The guy is just a master. And it was such a privilege to meet him. He was such a humble, sweet guy too. And
oh, that's so cool. This is just like seriously memories, and like just like this visual that you are building us of this journey you've taken is kind of legendary. Like it really is.
It really is. I can't believe it myself at times. I'm just like, man, you know, just years before I was just dreaming about this. You know, so after that 3 years was done at Skywalker, I moved to Pixar. Just happened to be that they were doing these Cars movies, and again, was channeling my inner car, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I worked on all 3 of those films, Finn McMissile, let's see here. I worked on Jackson Storm for the 3rd film, you know, just, you know, had a really good time on those films. Also, in between times, you know, designing things like the Elasticycle for Incredibles 2, all the vehicles for that film. But the high watermark for me at Pixar so far has been WALL-E, and the design of WALL-E and Eve, as well as the Axiom and a lot of the props in that film. So that was sweet. Just really kit bashing WALL-E together. Here's just a quick sketch of kind of early WALL-E here with exploding body. You know, just figuring out how he's going to compact this garbage. But you know, kit bashing is a motif in my life. I love to kit bash things. I love to take disparate items together, you know, and stick them together and see how they work together and see if I can get something new working out of them. And so, you know, just was really super inspired by the first films, and these shots of the guys in the model shops bashing the Millennium Falcon conveniently together.
Yeah.
So that's it, man. Let's get into it. Let's draw like let's get into the design here.
I'm so excited. This is going to be so great. We got so many people in the chat just screaming the word wow, also screaming the word WALL-E. Everyone's super pumped. One thing I do want to mention to you though is you pulled up the picture of Sebulba's pod racer.
Yeah.
And so you said that you had worked on that vehicle in particular. So when I was a kid, I had a gigantic poster of that on my wall. Like all the other girls had Britney Spears and like Lisa Frank, and I had Sebulba's pod racer on my wall.
That is awesome.
Oh, I just lost my lights for some reason again. It's the dark side now. There we go. Yeah, it's coming back. I'm not sure why that's happening. I apologize. It seems like it's not messing up my green screen, though. So maybe we're just transferring between Jedi and Sith mode every once in a while here. So yeah, let's talk about the Millennium Falcon. So you said that you love the Millennium Falcon and you kind of wanted to do like a redesign of this. I'm pumped for that because this is such a beloved vehicle.
Yes.
But I'd love to see how you kind of approach changing this up. So what's the plan?
Okay, well, first of all, I just have to pull this massive book out by Taschen here. I guess maybe some of you know this book already. It's huge. And sorry, I'm struggling with it right now, but
oh yes.
I'm familiar with that book. This big red one.
Yes.
And my girlfriend got this for me. It was such an awesome gift. On page 24, turn with me now to page 24.
Yes.
There's a whole 2 pages of my early Millennium Falcons that I did for Doug on episode 1 when they were still thinking about using the Millennium Falcon in that film, which would have been crazy, right? But that was the first thing I worked on at the ranch.
That's crazy. That's such a big thing to like dive into. That's just mind blowing.
It was overwhelming. I'd say,
Gosh.
like second or third day, I set off all the alarms at the main house at
No way.
Skywalker because I was like, I got up every morning at 5 a.m. and drove to the ranch. I didn't even care what time it was. I'm going to Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. And
I'll get up at 3. It doesn't matter what time, as long as that's the destination. Like,
so I was so giddy that morning. I walked through a different way up to the 3rd floor, and I set off all these alarms. And these 2 big buff guys came up, and like I was sitting there drawing Millennium Falcons, and they came at me, and they were cool. They the one guy extended his hand to shake my hand.
mm-hmm.
Or I wouldn't run. It was really great. But the Millennium Falcon. So Doug wanted me to turn it into more of a just a different kind of ship. Just kind of play around with its arrangement. It's a smuggler ship, right? It hauls freight, but it also hauls people who don't want to be discovered or found out.
Wookiees, smart Alex, men with fabulous capes. It's just hauls everything.
It's like an overnight delivery, right? Vehicle. So what I like about the Millennium Falcon, I want to think back to maybe prehistory, like before Han Solo bought this thing, or and what would it have been before that? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking more along the lines of an actual freight hauler, like something that take heavy stuff and haul it across the universe. So let me just, I'm fumbling around here a little bit. I built this Foamcore model here of the
okay.
So I thought, this is something that we do a lot in the industry. This is Foamcore 1.0. So it hasn't changed in a long time, and it's compatible with iOS and Android. So Foamcore, it's sweet, use it. And what I do with this, as you can see here in this sketch, is that coming up for all y'all?
Yep.
So, as you can see, I took a picture of this thing just against a black background, start drawing over it. And that's something we do a lot, is just, give ourselves all the tools we need to, not only, pump out as many ideas as possible in as short amount of time, but, it's easy. Your perspective is already there. There's not much to worry about. You just have to go in there and just kind of overlay the changes that you want to this.
Yeah, for sure. And it's it's a very smart way to work. It kind of, the thing ringing in my head is like the work smart, not hard. Like, why not? If you can make yourself a model and you can take a picture of this in any orientation you want, and then you have this beautiful spread of original photos that you can start working with, it's perfect. We also have a question for you in the chat from Mervin, who, since we're talking about process and all of that, how long does it take to reach the final concept artwork? And I'm curious about this too, because it's not just you in there, it's like a team of tons of people. So when you start sketching out like the sketches you have up right now, how long does it typically go from that stage to what we see in the films?
Oh my man. I'm thinking about like maybe Sebulba's Pod Racer, so I sketched an entire field of racers as well. The English art department contributed a bunch of designs as well. And it was probably about a month worth of working those designs up, getting them in front of George, and then him picking each one and assigning a character to each one. And so let's see, I actually built a foam core of Sebulba's engines. I kit bashed his chariot, and then did some more sketches. Did primarily color. Like I took photos of the foam core model, like I just did here with the Millennium, and overlaid color, more details. And we were working so fast and pretty loose at the ranch at that point that I would hand off that pretty rough sketch of the color and detail kind of greebly pass. I handed off the foam core model, anything they needed for like proportion and all that stuff. And wow. So, I mean, I would say probably all told about a month and a week.
Okay. All right.
For Sebulba. For other, like Wall-E, for instance, he took a year to design.
Really? Yeah. Well, he's the star. So that's, you'd have to, I imagine that would be a lot more time consuming and planning all of that out. Yeah. We also have some folks asking about, do you always use the Foamcore, or did you ever block models out in 3D, like digitally? And I think I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you were working like in the old school days up through, what we've got now. So I imagine you're probably doing traditional modeling first and then maybe on into 3D as the industry developed.
Yeah, honestly, my personal experience with digital 3D is minimal. I've used SketchUp and a bunch of other things, but we've got armies of people to do this for us. So I'm in the art department, and then I pass myself off to modeling, and we do kind of a pre-viz pass on things, keep it rough, loose, get proportion down, and then it's kind of the same kind of interaction between Foamcore and what I'm doing in Fresco. I'll take kind of early previs models and start sketching over those as well.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's something I want to do. It's just something I haven't gotten around to because I love Foamcore. I love the smell of hot glue. Let it go.
That's your joyful process. That's for you.
If I could put some hot glue sticks on my monitor or something.
Please don't do that, Jay. That doesn't work.
But here, tell you what, I'm sorry, I've been a little idle here. Let's begin drawing this Millennium Falcon here. And the first thing you got to do is draw that ellipse, right? And so you got to loosen up. Not every ellipse is going to be great, but sometimes you end up with a good one. Like that.
That's pretty good. I'm impressed.
So what I do in Fresco here, I take my handy traditional triangle here.
Okay.
And I know Fresco's got the line tool in it and everything, but there's something about just being in touch with what you're drawing. Thank God for, all this tactile stuff, but I like it. I like it better. And honestly, it gives you these little leading edges on the lines that give the line a little bit more character. There's a little bit more thick to thin.
Yeah.
It maintains some kind of humanity in the sketch. And then I just start kind of moving it around because I know I got to put that cockpit off to the side. So I want to give myself a little room off to the left there.
I can already see the Falcon. It's already there for me. It's
one of the primary characteristics of the Falcon is those little mandible shapes coming off the front, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and I have a kid memory of what the Millennium Falcon looks like. And honestly, it feels more like this Foamcore model. Really long mandible shapes coming off of it. I don't know. It's just what my brain tells me what the Millennium looks like. And of course, there's so much more squat and not pronounced, right? And I think I would love to see a version of the Millennium that has these longer mandible shapes on it.
Yeah, I feel like it would give it like a very powerful, maybe even sinister look, depending on how you did it. Like it would kind of change the mood or the aesthetic a lot, and make you feel different emotions just by that small change. I think for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking to the point that I'm thinking of this ship as more of a freighter, purpose build, take on the big ticket items and haul across the universe. And so I'm thinking, okay, let's expand those mandible parts out. to the very margins of the saucer shape. And let's see here. What do I want to do? I want to, so I'm drawing just a lot of like guidelines on this thing. And as you can see, I kind of struck some lines through there, trying to find the axis on the ellipse there. What I want to do here is just kind of establish this plane that I just drew that would receive the freight in a way.
Nice.
So what if you think of that just as a big garage door?
Mm-hmm.
And on the inner surfaces of these these kind of catamaran mandible things. I don't have another name for these things other than mandible.
Mandible's a good word. It is definitely a good word. I approve of it.
Awesome. Let's see here. Let me collapse. See, the sketch kind of starts to turn into this, I don't know, just a lot of lines. I tend to go through and reduce the contrast of these lines.
Mm-hmm. I do the same thing. I think like once you kind of lay something out, you don't really need to see like the super thick lines. And I find myself doing a sketch and then dropping the opacity down and then kind of building upon the suggestion of it over time. Yeah. If that makes sense, it kind of helps me visualize. And I think that's what you're doing here is like, it's a lot of lines and a lot of shapes, but it's really starting to take form. And the more lines you add, the more my imagination is starting to supply things to the creation on its own.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I'll go through this. You know what? The greatest gift of my career these days is just me giving myself time to percolate on an idea, and myself space before I start drawing it. And at this point in my career, I pretty much know what I'm going to draw before I draw it because I'm just constantly thinking about it. And in this instance, I've been thinking about this for about 25 years. So
yeah, so it's definitely had some time to percolate a little bit. We've got some really lovely comments in the chat. Everyone just very excited for all of this. But we've had some folks ask about, let's see, I'm going to make sure I read it properly. Some folks saying that it's really refreshing to see that pros have to redraw a shape multiple times. And I think that's a great point too, is that I think that we get so caught up in looking at the portfolios of people that we really admire who create these things. And we're seeing their best work. We're seeing their final products. And it's very easy to assume that they go from point A to B with a snap of a finger every time. But, just because you see all their finished work does not mean that there's not some mistakes in there every once in a while. It does not mean that they're getting it right the first time. It's just what happens.
It's absolutely true. You got to fail forward. You got to
fail forward. That's beautiful.
Right? You gotta sketch this thing out. You gotta be like, oh no, that doesn't work. Oh, you gotta take the whole thing and visit and take a look at it and maybe put the thing away for a day, come back to it. But it takes a lot to put, into these designs. And yeah, nothing comes easy. Yeah.
That's the truth. And we also have some folks saying, Mervyn says, I was always interested in concept art for movies, but I always stayed away from it because I considered myself not an artist. But for a beginner artist, what would you suggest on how to improve in concept art? I guess just general, like if he's getting into concept art now, do you have any advice or suggestions for him as he begins this journey?
Wow. Well, keep a sketchbook every day. Draw every day. Draw what you love every day, but also expand on it, and draw things that make you uncomfortable. I don't draw humanoids. I don't draw animals. My girlfriend's taught me how to draw a horse finally in my life. But I really, everything I draw, uh, well, what? Yeah, keep a sketchbook. Keep a sketchbook. That's the first rule of just being an artist, of course. But that's how I got my job at Pixar. I brought in a pile of like 5 or 6 sketchbooks, and that's what got me the job. So
Nice.
I think, it depends on what the job is. Pixar was looking for someone who they wanted to see my problem solving in my work. That's why the sketchbooks worked. They were so into me and showing kind of the evolution of designs and things changed. And I brought them in my Star Wars portfolio, and it was pretty much finished work. Pretty tight for me, which I don't work tight, and I don't really paint, so it's all this line work. It's all this kind of very engineer style design work.
Very functional though, so they can see that you really are thinking about the form and function and how is this going to work, which can tell them, can we animate this and can we make characters interact with this? Is this something that has that much substance? So
and as well, just showing how versed I am in like a huge amount of stuff in these sketchbooks. Let's see. What was I thinking? Don't you love
Somebody is screaming, "Show us the horse," because you said that your girlfriend taught you to draw a horse. Show us the horse.
You don't want to see this horse. No, I was going to go into that story about taking my Star Wars portfolio to Pixar, and then looking at it and going, "Oh, this is great, but we don't do Star Wars. We don't do science."
Yeah.
And really come back with your sketchbooks, because I was like, oh, I got my sketchbooks. Yeah. So that's it was a little bit like, oh my God, no, wait, my Star Wars portfolio isn't good enough, but just learn, as I'm going to hopefully convey here today. My drawing style evolved from just combining simple shapes. See here, you got the cylinder. You've got just kind of this garage door up front. That's just a plane. It was really all about simplifying a design down into basic shapes and or building it up from simple shapes. So, I'd really encourage you in everyone's kind of, if you love ship design, stuff like that, really, really just start to play with the most elementary shapes that you can. Look at Ralph McQuarrie's stuff. R2D2, so simple. Darth Vader, you can break his mask down into so many simple shapes.
Yep.
That's the root of it for me. That's how I learned how to draw, and again, my dad's kind of inspiration from car design informed that as well, and it all kind of took on this very kind of engineered, purposeful look. And I like my designs to have function. I don't, frivolity in sci-fi is cool, but I love when something really looks like it'll work,
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's something that's common for science fiction design though, right? Especially when you look back at like science fiction from the 70s and 80s. I think that specifically the designs for weapons and gadgets and things in that time, it was kind of supposed to just look like something that was cool, and they tell you that it does a thing, but there wasn't as much emphasis in a lot of the major franchises on like, what is this weird little twirly thing full of blue liquid do on the side? Like, what is that? And then I think we've definitely moved into like a major function kind of science fiction design realm now, but it was not always like that.
No, it wasn't like that at all. Building props out of, literally cardboard boxes and tubes and things like that from the films of our past. But I'm just adding this element here on here. in that book, in that prequels book that I showed you, I was thinking about an overhead boom that would come out. It'd be like the third mandible on this thing.
Okay. It kind of looks like it could grab. And that was, you said, kind of your purpose here is kind of making it really look like this ship hauls things. And this kind of looks like it's just going to scoop, something and just take it away. And
here, hold on. Let me just do this real quick. Merge layers. I'm going to, sometimes in my job, I'll just take an existing piece of reference and I'll draw something over it. Like, here we have the original, and we've got these. Oops! Oh, that's a big old thick brush. I don't. Where are my brushes at? All favorites. There we go. Yeah. So we got this. Of course, we got those triangle shapes coming out. But then, looking back at this thing, it's got these kind of what look like, up and down. There are these kind of things that look like they could splay open.
Yeah, like grab on to something. I see what you mean too by like kind of having this idea as in your memory of those mandibles being a lot longer versus how they are in the design. And I think it's because that mandible shape kind of recedes back even past the lip of the actual front of the ship. So it does kind of give that look, which I'm paying attention to now. So I see where that came from.
Yeah, I guess, I'm channeling myself from 1996, and I looked into this void right here, and I was like, well, what is that for?
Yeah,
we gotta exploit that. And so actually looking at it a little further, just in the past few days, building up to this event, I was like, well, what if all these things just kind of exploded and rotated up? And became, I don't know, part of the mechanism that received the cargo. I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys? I'll quit out of that and go back to the sketch. But
yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But I thought, okay, well, we could have like possibly one more kind of shape coming out that would assist in craning whatever this, cargo was into the garage doors here. I don't think we want a lower one. If we did, we'd want it to maybe behave like a ramp or something like that. Because, you got a big old cargo box. You're not going to necessarily want it to have to like key into these 4 finger shapes completely. But, and also I was thinking about this, like, well, what if the cargo box that we're taking on board here actually just lives outside the Falcon? What if it just kind of fits into this shape here? I mean, it's, you don't want just a big old honking box just hanging out over the front of your ship. That's not very sexy, but you want this stuff to look cool as well.
Yeah, for sure. But I think we could finesse it. You could finesse a box to looking cool.
Yeah. We can definitely finesse a box.
We have John saying, looking at that satellite dish on the Falcon makes me wonder how that thing stays attached as it's going through warp drive. It did come off and it was replaced. So you're not wrong.
Yeah. Can anyone tell us where it came off?
I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to see if somebody in the chat, because if you're asking me Star Wars trivia questions, I'm going to scream all the answers and ruin it for everyone else.
Pop quiz. Where'd the Millennium Falcon's radar dish come off?
And what does it look like now? Because we have a different one now.
Somebody picked it up and they're using it as a couch, and they threw a bunch of pillows in it.
Yeah. We also have, let me see, I want to make sure I didn't miss this. Let me scroll through the chat. We've got so many people are chatting and hanging out. Okay, so George Carmona says, what is your favorite, most successful mistake? And I'm really intrigued with this question. So like a mistake you made that ended up being like, oh my God, look what I did. This is great.
Moving to California.
Nice. Okay. All right. From where?
Well, that was not a mistake. No. Wow, that's a great question. Dang, greatest mistake that turned out to be the best thing I ever did. Uh, Adopting my daughter? No,
Okay.
no, that wasn't a mistake either. I can't frame it in my brain the right way here. No, okay, let's just stick to the industry here. Let's see. I'm replaying every project in my head as we are here.
You can think about it. You can let it percolate for a while if you need to.
I'll get back to you on that question.
Jeffrey says, "Is that the Star Trek ship?" Come on, guys. Come on. I was deliberately ignoring the version you had sketched of the Millennium Falcon as the top of the ship from Star Trek. I did notice that. It did not go unnoticed. I saw it, Jay. I saw it, and I looked away.
Yes. Avert your eyes. But you know what? I don't know. Do we want that or not? Do we want that big box sitting on the front of the Millennium Falcon? Probably not.
But hey, trying these ideas out, I think, if you hate it and you don't think it's working, you now know what not to do. And I think that in many cases, that's just as valuable as figuring out the right path. Like, what avenues you don't want to take, which helps you narrow down, the best course of action. So still valuable.
Fail forward.
Mm-hmm.
Draw everything, and give it some life. And if it doesn't work, it's pretty apparent from the get-go that it's not going to work. But it'll take you somewhere else. Just like in life, when you feel like you're messing up, it's going to get you somewhere else. So and sometimes what I do, just to then kind of start to solidify all these lines in my head, I'll just throw some tone on here.
All right.
And, just to kind of pull it all together and give it some mass, some visual mass. And it can be sloppy. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like you said, not all this concept art is beautiful.
It's a concept, it's a concept.
Yeah. And I kind of, I'm partial to these drawings being more functional than, pieces that would go in the MoMA. Every so often, you're like, oh, this is going to be great. If I put color on this, cool. But you know what? We're making movies. We're making stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, the last, I don't know. I mean, most of my work at Pixar has been pretty rough, honestly. Not stuff that I'd want to really show, but because it's really just got a function of like, I hand this to the modeler. It's an orthographic 3-view, again with kind of a detail pass, maybe some color thrown in, and get it off my plate. Get it into previs as quickly as possible, into some 3D form. Because you got to get the stuff into context as quickly as possible, so you understand the scale of it. A ship to a human scale to a environment scale, whatever it is. Same thing we did with Wally and Eve. To get their kind of proportions to each other right, proportions to Wally's truck. Everything kind of grows from Wally in that. So his truck, the scale of it, his surroundings. All that. As you can see here, I just duplicated another of the tone layers so that I could get some shadow play on just the left side of the Falcon here.
And so now you just kind of erase from that second tone. Is that what we're doing here?
I just knock it in here really fast. And
nice.
Fast and loose, and just kind of gives the sketch a little dimension. I
might try that myself, because I always use addition, like I always add to, but it might be cool just to test this out, because then I don't really have to place anything. It's already exactly where it needs to be. I just remove what's unnecessary. That's a great idea.
It's just a fast way of knocking it in there. And So, for designs that I'm kind of stoked on, I'll go in and spend as much time trying to, you know, I don't know, spell out what's exactly going on here.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, it's like, I don't like spending a lot of time on individual sketches because I want to get through as many of my ideas as possible. And one way of doing that is like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this and duplicate it and pull up this one. And I'm just going to collapse all these layers. Oh, mind with me as I collapse my layers.
Nice. Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to read some more questions from the chat as you do that. And Katie, I'm laughing at Katie's comment because Katie says, my kid likes your Millennium Falcon game controller. And I think that's so funny because I think most controllers look like spaceships. And I think this one specifically, now that she said that, is giving me like N64 vibes. And I think it makes it better. It's better now that I know this, now that I have it in my brain, I like it more. So great. I feel like you could turn, because you had showed like that image of the lunchbox that you had done and then how you turned that into a spaceship. And I think that a lot of these interesting designs and just like objects have the potential to definitely be spaceships if you put enough finesse into it. Like you really could.
It's just like anything can turn into anything you want it to be. So turn it into a spaceship. I could turn, Wally into a spaceship. I could, I don't know, turn it into a spaceship,
Yeah.
And so here you see, I'm just taking the sketch as it was, and I don't know, I'm just playing around with the proportions of these mandibles. Maybe we want these things to live out back as well.
Oh, I love it.
Give it a completely new life here. Oops, no, I didn't want to do that. Meh. Let's see, transfer.
I appreciate the sound effects.
Yeah, well, very important. So, yeah, they're very important. They make your sketches come alive.
That's how the stylus works. If you don't make a sound effect when you put stylus to tablet, it doesn't do anything. You have to make a noise.
Adobe, if you're listening, which you are, if you could add sound effects to to what I'm doing here, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, honestly, I've got sound effects in my mind as you're working. So please know that at least I am enjoying this with sound effects. We have, let's see, Mervin has got some really great questions. So Mervin is asking about, let me make sure I read this properly. If you always start out your projects taking your own references, or if you just go for it when things pop in your head. And also, do you like if your concepts have ever been rejected, which I assume they have, because I don't think you can work on the projects that you have on such big teams without somebody saying, yeah, it's not doing it for me, but when your designs get rejected, how do you handle that?
Oh, you know what? I'm cool with it. I understand that making film is crazy. I can't even pretend to know what the director is thinking, and it all comes back to them and their idea of the story. So I know the first thing or fifth or 20th thing off my drawing board is not going to be the thing, potentially. So I just go into every art review thinking like, okay, I'm putting all this stuff up. I'm going to get the direction I need. And the director and the production designer and art director, all of them are going to help, mold this design to where it needs to be according to what the director needs in the story, because it's all about the story, right? So yeah, it's not a big deal to me. It's harder to not get the gigs you want. But once you're inside a project that you're enjoying, I'm just happy to be there.
Yeah, for sure. And this is, like I said, this is this I guess, progression of your professional journey is it's legendary. And I think that if I went to Skywalker Ranch and George Lucas himself was like, this drawing is awful, I'd be like, I love you, George Lucas, because I'd be talking to George Lucas, you know. So it's not really all that bad, I think, if your stuff is not put into the movie as is. It's a process. And I think that if you could take one person and have that one person make every single thing for the film, then you wouldn't have these giant teams. The credits at the end of the film would be a lot lighter than they are.
Last 30.
So just be like the one guy and George Lucas, but that's not possible. So.
What was I going to say? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, George had stamps that he would tell us if he liked the work or not. So he had 3 stamps. One, oh man, what was it? Actually, they're on the pages in the book here.
No way.
Super cool book. You'll see some of the sketches have little red stamps in them. Mm-hmm. And God, I'm totally phasing on what the stamps were these days. Let me see if I can look it up real quick.
Okay.
Oh yeah, one was okay. Thank you, Renee. One was okay. When he liked it, but it needed more work.
Okay.
But the Fabuloso stamp was when you nailed it.
Fabuloso.
I don't know.
I'm dying. This is great. What if he didn't like it though? Like it was just like an angry face or just a big no? Or did he stamp if he didn't like it?
Just didn't get a stamp, that's all.
Oh, that's ooh. Oh no. I am imagining George Lucas like shuffling around Skywalker Ranch with a little Batman utility belt of stamps, just going around doing his thing. I love it. This is the timeline I choose to believe in. That's what I choose to imagine.
Yeah, in fact, I saw him at lunch one day and he had a sandwich in front of him and he put a Fabuloso stamp on it. But we did trick him into, it was his birthday on 2, I remember. No, wait, maybe it was late episode 1, I forget. But I just put up a storyboard sequence for him to review on the wall. Mm-hmm. The whole idea, Doug and the coordinator were in on this, and they were like, okay, let's flip one of the storyboards that's obviously in the wrong screen direction, et cetera. That's just a blaring obvious mistake. Let's switch this one storyboard so that George takes this one stamp and stamps his happy birthday stamp. So that was just a way to trick him into stamping something, and we got him that day.
Awesome. I love it.
George is a cool guy, but he's super quiet. He he loves sitting around a table and just talking shop and trips with people, and and so his reaction to that moment was just like, oh, he kind of looked at the stamp and okay.
I love it.
Oh, that's funny. He's such a great guy, and I really, really did enjoy working with him.
We have, let's see, George Carmona in the chat asking the real questions. He would like to know what color lightsabers we would have. And I'll start it off that my lightsaber absolutely 100% would be purple. That's just hands down. I have a few red lightsabers. I do. I've got like 3 replicas. I have not gotten my hands on the Mace Windu yet, but if I had a real lightsaber, my blade would definitely be purple, 100%. What about you, Jay?
I'm thinking of like a nice mauve.
Okay. All right. Fancy. Very fancy. Okay.
I like a kind of a steely blue.
Okay.
I would have a blue lightsaber.
Nice. I like it. And I want to know in chat as well, what color lightsabers would you folks have? I'm not, I hate to spoil this, but I am awarding extra imaginary points for all of my dark side folks out there. All my all my chat siths get extra points, but the points don't actually do anything. You don't. It's like, whose line is it anyways? The points don't matter, but I am giving them out. Sam says, "Can my lightsaber be rapidly changing RGB? Very rave-like. I like to bring the party." You can. I can't guarantee that the other lightsaber wielders will take you seriously, but I think you should go for it.
Nice.
The mood saber.
Mood saber.
Mood saber. I love it. George says, "I'm going with gold." I like gold. That's like old, like legends, like back when there were a lot more lightsaber wielders out there. A lot of people had gold.
Sweet. Well, here, I just popped into another sketch here. Just to demonstrate too, like these are all hand sketched. Well, because I'm using my hand, but no, pen and paper. But I worked these up a bunch of months ago before I even knew about this event. And so I'm just recycling some old material here.
Okay.
I was looking at the cockpit shape. I was like, okay, what if we don't go with just a cylindrical shape? What if we actually put a line down the middle of this thing, make it look more kind of a diamond shape, hard edge diamond?
Okay, yeah.
And so, this is just part of my job. I'm going through every little detail of the ship, of the design, blah. And here again, I loved watercolors as a kid, and I really need to get back into it. But what I'm doing here is basically watercolor, because I'm just going in and playing with translucency and just I want to define the surfaces and the shapes on these designs so that the read is just right there. And when the directors seen it on the wall, they're like, okay, I understand that sketch immediately, because there's just one light source, shadow, blah 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 blah, blah, all the way down to the final little details. So that's what I like to do. Here, let's see if I can draw. It's
Here we go. You know what though? I bet you can. I bet I have a feeling that you can. Also, we've got Katie in the chat saying my lightsaber would be fuchsia because I like saying the word fuchsia. I hate to break it to our friend Steve. I will not allow you to claim plaid as a lightsaber color. That's not happening. It's not.
Steve, I think you got something though.
No, Jay, no. Now you've converted Jay, and I don't know. I am not team plaid. It's not happening for me.
Team plaid. That's pretty hilarious. I like it.
I like it too, secretly, but don't tell anyone.
I'm knocking in a little bit of indication of interior there. I'll go and use my airbrush. Oh, that's a big one. I'll shrink the size of that. It may take just a strike through there just to indicate some, the roundness of that window. Again, I'm just building these sketches up from just layering. And I by the end of a sketch, I'll have like 30 or 40 layers. I don't mind just piling the layers on. And then I'll collapse them.
Yep, and it'll just merge. Or group. Sometimes I'm too scared and I'll group them or make it a smart object in Photoshop, because then I feel like the moment I commit to flattening all my layers is the moment my client is like, can you go back? And I'm like, no, I can't. But I also really love, one of the things that I'm really seeing here in your approach to sort of rendering these sketches kind of into a 3D space here, is that you really are using these swipes of value to convey so much. So you have, duplicating those layers and then subtracting part of it just to add different value, and creating these faces of a 3D object, these dark and light swipes through your kind of medium value there. Suddenly I'm looking at a domed window with light catching on the panels. And I just think that's, something I wanted to point out for chat, because I know there's a lot of folks in here who are either just getting into illustrating or have been for a while, but are looking for new approaches or better ways to convey their ideas faster. And I think this is something very important to keep track of as Jay works, because it works. It's like minimum, brush strokes for maximum impact, kind of.
Exactly it. You know what? My dad was also a graphic designer as well as a car designer.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from just growing up with graphic design, just how to communicate something super clearly. And honestly, I feel like if you understand how to lay type out on a page, it's going to really inspire you, in your drawing techniques as well.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I know that's a little bit of a disconnect there, but, it's all about, positive, negative, composition.
Yeah. Composition is one of the greatest lessons I learned and translated from graphic design to illustration and painting, 100%. My compositions were like, I always felt like I was floundering and I didn't know what I was doing, and it showed. But when I started doing graphic design, all of a sudden I'm using my brain constantly to do type lockups and, conveying the most information in the most attractive way without bombarding my viewers with too much information and busy design. And it really does translate. It's definitely something you can carry over.
Yes, absolutely. So here, I just created this little vignette about for this the cockpit shape. And as you can see, the one above it has kind of an elongated pill, kind of vertical pill shape.
Mm-hmm.
I'll fill a page of these and just have these up next to kind of a bigger overall shot of the ship. And so it just fills in the details. It offers up so much more information and options. The director might look at this and say, "Oh, I like this cockpit design or that." Mm-hmm. Immediately, I'll just be like, "Okay, my job is done here. I just combine these and I'm done."
Yeah, give them a little choose your own adventure, basically, of like, what is this going to look like? Here's a couple of basic shapes and here's some cool features and tell me what you like. Best way to do it, I think, especially when you're developing something is meant to be so iconic, is having a lot of different plug and play ideas. Love the movement happening here, by the way. This is cool.
So, as you can see here, I was drawing this earlier in the week. And I drew this character down here with the claw hands because he's got 2 millennium falcons for hands.
I love it.
So that's a new character for the Star Wars universe. If anyone's out there working on the new ones, oh yeah, this is the new one right here.
There it goes.
So I'm just gonna quickly give him a little background contrast and boop boop.
The sound effects are making this drawing a lot more powerful than it was a few moments ago. It's happening.
What should we call this guy?
Can we call him the Falclaw?
Falclaw.
Millennium Falclaw.
Oh man. Whew. I'm really dating myself with this, but remember Falco from the 80s?
I don't know. I'm gonna do you solid here, and I'm gonna Google Falco though, because it's possible I've seen it and I don't know the name attached to it.
I really dated myself here. Anyway, yeah, Falco or Falcon something. That'll be great. Yeah. So what should we do next here? Maybe focus on the use of 3D as an underlay.
Okay.
And here again, I struck a nice ellipse through there. I'm going to erase that so it's not in the way. But this is kind of a smaller version of what I was working on earlier. Again, here we can play with contrasts, and I'm going to shrink my pen a little bit here because it's a little fat. But, just kind of going through and
Just building those ideas and expanding upon what we learned from the last iteration, I think is kind of the plan here. And I like that. And I think that this is really great for folks to see, kind of harkening back to what I mentioned earlier in the stream, just the idea that when you look at these awesome final finished products that people are working on, you are kind of robbed of being able to view the process and seeing all these different sketches that we do, and how like hearing you talk out loud and how you're problem solving here and stuff is just really valuable for everyone who would like to be doing the same thing. Keep the questions coming in too, by the way, folks. Jeffrey wants to know, as far as sound effects go, where are the pew pews and the turbo pew pews? I'm sorry, you're right. There hasn't been a single pew pew. Yeah, there, thank you. There we go. Got it.
Falcon makes the greatest noise. So Volvo's Pod Racer makes a great noise because they combine that IndyCar with a jet engine.
Oh, that's so cool.
But Millennium Falcon has this sweet. I was just watching Empire last night, and man, it's just such a high pitched. I mean, that engine's really wound up.
There's a few sounds in the Star Wars universe though that like really, like you feel it. Yeah. Yeah. One of them, and I'm gonna make myself sound like a massive nerd here, but when the new sequel started coming out, I went to the theater, of course, several times. And the sound that actually I teared up, I like had tears in my eyes, was like the scree of sound from the TIE fighters, just as they like, route around and like pass by you real quick. That sound is the weirdest sound to be a precious sound to you, but it's very nostalgic.
I mean, the sound work, Ben Burtt's sound work, all these films, amazing. He came to Pixar briefly to work on WALL-E. In fact, was responsible for WALL-E's voice, Eve's voice, all the voice work and sound effect in that film.
Nice.
And I of course, I got to know him at the ranch as well. And he took these amazing home videos. Well, at that time, home movies, like he had his camera on him over in England, on the stages, over here at the ranch. And he gave these amazing talks at Pixar about, it was basically just kind of a full experience of the movie production. And he would not only talk about the sound effect, of course, but he would talk about, just what the director was thinking at what time on the set, what dictated the shot. It was really amazing to hear him speak.
Wow, that sounds incredible. What is, if I can ask, I don't know if you have a favorite off the top of your head, but what would you say, because you're talking about like the combinations of sounds used to create some of these awesome sound effects, is there a combination of like weird mundane sounds that created a famous sound that you're like fond of in the films, like something you just wouldn't, like when you watch the movie it's a starship or whatever, and then when you know what it is you're like, how?
Yeah, well, I remember watching something back in the 70s on TV. It was and it was about Ben Burtt. I don't know what the show was, but it showed him next to a guide wire to a telephone post. Took like a tuning fork or something hard in metal and just whacked this, guide wire. His recorder, right there, and it's the sound of the laser blast. It was like a.
No way! That's so cool.
And so I love the fact that there was this guy walking around San Rafael, well, maybe LA earlier, but San Rafael later, just, with his tape recorder, whacking and seeing what kind of noise he could get out of him.
That's so cool. And you kind of imagine like a Foley, recorder, or, people who are doing sound effects. I always see them like in a studio somewhere with like weird objects, like a pair of shoes, and stomping them with their hands into a box of gravel or whatever. But I don't really imagine them just walking around in life and happening upon strange sounds.
Yeah.
But that's better. That's better that this guy just walks around and, you know, was looking for the perfect sounds.
No, and it's in its own right is kit bashing. It's taken from your environment and just reusing it in a different way. It's telling you, kit bashing is the way.
That's so cool.
Make it your life. Make kit bashing your life. You know, just trying to see here what we want to do next to this sketch. You know, I'm kind of jumping around. Let's see, what else do I got? I got the submarine from 2000 or whatever it is, Leagues Under the Sea. That's a sweet submarine.
That's pretty cool.
Let's see. Any suggestions from the crowd? You want to go back into this one? This one feels like it's got something going on.
It does. I especially like how you extended the mandibles towards the back as well. And I feel like these subtle design changes that you did, because essentially it's still the same concept. It's still in the same family as our beloved Millennium Falcon, but it's started to look a lot more aggressive. Like, when I see the Millennium Falcon, and maybe I'm biased because I love the Millennium Falcon, but if I were to see the Falcon in space, I'd be like, cool ship, you know. But if I saw this in space, I'd be like, we need to go. We have to get out of here. This is not a safe place to be. And I love that just changing those small things suddenly gives you this whole different air. And I like it. I really do like the shape of this one. But let us know in the chat if you folks have any suggestions. Even, I mean, if you guys, I'm sure you folks in the chat are brainstorming what the ship could be. If you have had any cool ideas, throw them in the chat. We've got some other comments here. It looks like Anthony's saying, Val, how do you have time to see Star Wars more than once? That's amazing to me. And I said, I'm thinking as I read this, like, I had time to see the Star Wars movie the first time, and the other times that I went to see the Star Wars movies as they come out, I don't have time, but I'm there anyways. That's how it works. It's like you see the new Star Wars the first time, and then the other times you're really not supposed to be there, but you can't stay away, is kind of how it goes.
Gotta honor the Star Wars.
Yep.
Oh man, I'm trying to think if there's any other like stories from the ranch that were funny or.
Well, Tony's asking a question that might lead you. Is what gives you butterflies in your career cycle, like butterfly moments where you just were like, oh my gosh, this is happening?
God, is this Tony cartoonish?
This is Tony Helms.
Tony Helms, yeah. Hi, Tony.
Do you know Tony?
I know Tony. Tony's
awesome.
In fact, he put together a little promotional video for this, which I really appreciate, Tony. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, butterflies, right? You know, when I first walked into the third floor on that eventful day back in 1996, I first saw Ian McCaig, terribly lad,
oh my gosh,
and then just acres and upon acres boards of artwork and Doug's beautiful hand-painted acrylics, and I that was a moment for me.
Yeah, I imagine.
I was like, wait a minute, am
I supposed to be here?
Should I be serving coffee? Should I get my apron down in the kitchen?
Should I bring you a coffee?
Yeah. But I remember going, yes, this is right. This is your dream. This is what you've, dreamt about for your entire life. So just do it. Just sit down and start drawing. And it was so funny because Ian, I don't know if you met or seen Ian speak or it's a real
I would love to. I have not had the opportunity, but that would be an honor.
great, just theatrical, just bigger than life. And he saw me and he just has these wild eyes and he just extended his hand and was like, welcome.
Oh, that's so cool.
And
that's so neat.
And that was, I guess, now I remember it. There were people congratulating me that day. And I was like, thank you. Like
kind of looking around like, is this a dream? Am I supposed to be here? This is so crazy. That's awesome, man. That's like, I feel like I can picture that, just the way that you've explained it. And I think that is just kind of a beautiful moment, like the turning point of here I am, and let's go on this adventure.
If I can mumble on a little bit more about that, like I was working at this video game place called Rocket Science Games for that. And David Nakabayashi, who's now a creative director at ILM, there at this startup with me, and we worked together a little bit. And I heard that his friend was Doug Chang, and I was like, Dave, could I get Doug's number from you? Could I? Can
we go to lunch, please?
And Dave was very kind. He checked with Doug first, and then gave me his number. And I called Doug very nervously, and Doug invited me over to his house to show him my portfolio.
Okay.
And it was great. He was eating dinner. I think he just got home from work and he was just eating dinner, and I sat there in his living room and just kind of went through this portfolio, and he was just like, yeah, And Doug too is very quiet and methodical, and I thought that the ums and ahs were a positive sign, and I got a call back from him maybe about 3 weeks later saying that I was on a short list. And then a little bit later than that I got the job. And I think I immediately called my parents and was like crying,
I would too. I'd call my mom and I'd be ugly crying on the phone. Like, you're never going to believe what has happened. That's crazy.
It was, and so wow, there's somewhere in that timeline, it was around Christmas time, and I sent Doug a Christmas card. And it was only meant for Doug, this Christmas card.
Oh no, I assume that means that it wasn't only seen by Doug.
The thing is, I published like 100 of them, and I gave them to everybody that year.
Okay. But
the design was for Doug's eyes only, really, just to motivate him to hire me.
Nice.
I'll never discount the effect of a Christmas card.
Okay.
And to this day, I want to think that helped.
Hey, that's actually a really excellent idea. I know I've talked to a lot of people who have clients that they've done design work for and all this kind of stuff. And they have, every certain amount of time on a special occasion or something, they send out a postcard or, a little letter or something. Hey, it's just a friendly message, keeping you on their minds and likewise. And that would be a really great thing to do. Like, if you have clients that you actually mail things to and you ask if they are open to you sending a card annually, sending a card featuring brand new work, impressive work, would be an excellent way to keep people very interested in what you've been doing.
Truly. Even with all the social media that we have at our disposal, a card through the mail is pretty impactful.
Yeah. We've got some great questions in the chat that I'd like to scroll through and then ask some of them. So we've got Sam Peterson saying, do you ever get detailed enough in your drawings to convey the texture and greebles of the ship, or is that beyond the concept phase? And for those of you in the chat who don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but I'm pretty sure the term greebles is just like the little sketchy things, or little bits and pieces that you kind of add into concept work. I think it could probably be anything. It's just like little bits and bobs of design structure.
Yeah, in fact, I believe our friend Sid Mead may have come up with that term, but
Nice. Yeah. Yes.
it's just all the service detail, all the plumbing, all the exposed plumbing on the Millennium Falcon. My God, lots of it in Empire last night when it's sitting in the Hoth hangar.
Yep.
All that stuff in there is amazing.
So cool.
Yes, I do get to a point of getting to that. In sketches like this, I'll go in and really just indicate, which means I'm just kind of laying in noise. And here again, just kind of indicating that there is just stuff laid into these surfaces. Now, if you can see that, I'm gonna just dial it down a little bit in contrast, and sometimes I'll just go back in and just add some pretty basic shadow work in there. I know this isn't not very easy to read, but from a distance, you start to get to the idea that there's a bunch in there.
You can start to see like there would be panels and tubes and little service panels, maybe, all that sort of stuff. Also, Mervyn is asking, even after being in the industry so long, do you still get nervous before the start of a new project as if it was the start of your career? Like, do you still feel that feeling when you begin something new, or is that old news?
I absolutely do feel it. In fact, not only 2 weeks ago, I started a new project at Pixar, and I was beside myself. I was just like, oh, how's it going to be? Just like second guessing myself, doubting myself. Like I'm almost 30 something years into my career, and I still have a healthy sense of doubt and that imposter syndrome that I felt on that first day at the ranch.
That's amazing. That's good to know. It's good to know. I think people think that once they find a job or a gig like what you've done, that goes away. And then I think people think that if they feel that fear, then they must not be a professional. But that's not true.
That's not true at all. You are absolutely a professional. You got to bust through that feeling. And for me, it's the moment when I start drawing and contributing is when all that stuff goes away. I'm like, and you start getting feedback, which is mostly positive, hopefully. But it's really, you start interacting with the project, you start understanding it, getting your head around it, and it takes a while. Sometimes it takes weeks to get up to speed. Like on a Cars film, I grew up in car culture, so I say that work just fell off the tip of my pen because there's just such a backlot of stuff up here.
Yeah, you were in the zone on that one, I'll bet.
And my pen could do no wrong. But you gotta let. You got to vibe into it. You got to let the good times roll, and just just do what you do best. That's why you're hired, right? You're not there by mistake.
Yeah.
And you got to use that to your benefit as well.
You can't let that fear convince you that you don't belong there, because if you didn't, you wouldn't have been offered the gig, or you wouldn't have applied and had somebody look at your work and think, yeah.
Exactly it. Yeah. So yeah, just have confidence in yourself. It's easy to say, hard to execute, but it'll come.
Great advice. Excellent advice. We have Jeffrey Sturm here who's says, Jay, serious question.
Yes.
What would you recommend to a writer for world building a science fiction world that no one has ever seen before. So I guess like advice you might give somebody who is designing, like, I guess the system, the rules of a science fiction story.
Oh my God.
That's a heavy question. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Can I percolate on that?
Yes, you may. You may percolate on anything, because we've got so many questions that are like so deep sometimes, that you kind of have to think about it. And also you're drawing, while you're doing all of this. It's a lot. I can maybe offer something to you on this, because I, aside from illustrating, I love writing stories. I write secretly, like a lot. I have like a few novels worth of content up online. I just don't tell anybody that it's me, because I don't want anyone to read it and know that I wrote it, because I'm scared. But I write all the time. I would love one day to have some, I like writing fantasy and urban fantasy. So I'd like to have novels out someday, start a series of my own. And I think that one of the things that I think about, because I like to write stories and I like to illustrate characters and scenes from those stories, is kind of, how do I explain it? When you're developing the rules and regulations of how something is supposed to work and how a story is supposed to flow, I would think of your writing the way you would think of an illustrative storyboard. And organize it that way. That's what helped me, because I wasn't really very good at organizing a story in the beginning. But once I started illustrating more and I started getting into, looking at concept artists and how they organize a storyboard and how they tell a story visually, I realized that could be translated to writing as well. So you could take a lot of inspiration from concept artists and storyboard artists and illustrators in that way, and see if that works for you and translates to writing.
Yeah. Awesome. Great answer.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I'm not missing anything else, because there are so many great folks in the chat who are so excited to be here. I can't remember who it was. I glanced at it. Oh yeah, Bruce says, "Ooh, this must be Val's dream stream." You're not wrong, Bruce. I am very happy to be here, chit-chatting with Jay and stuff. This is a pretty cool moment. Tony says, "Always wanted to design a paper model I can send out as a card, maybe a car card." That is genius. That would be cool.
That's awesome, Tony. You should definitely do that.
I want one. I already want one. Mervin says, "Do you take suggestions from non-technical or like a lay person in design who may not be related to the project, or is not the director or the person who directs focus for a project? Like, do you get outside feedback and stuff while you're working on a film or something, or do you keep it within,
You know what, on the Cars movies, like we had to get a lot of those characters cleared legally with the manufacturers. So
okay.
From them as well, because we're changing those characters, the proportion and the whole design. Honestly, we want to get their buy off. On what was it, on Wall-E? We showed some stuff to JPL, in fact.
Okay.
Our producer at the time had ties, knew someone at JPL. We took an amazing tour there, saw the prototypes of the Mars rovers out in the yard and all that stuff.
That's so cool. That's so awesome.
That's actually one of the best parts of the gig, is research trips. Like on Cars 2, we went on a 12-day tour through Europe. Every day was a different nation. It was just like mind-blowing. So yeah, we do. We take feedback from a lot of people, but we especially at Pixar, we keep it internal most of the time.
Yeah.
if there's something that the director's like, oh, we got to get that detail absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's show it to this person or that person.
Mm-hmm.
I remember on Cars 3, the design of Jackson Storm was up for grabs because it's the next generation NASCAR.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had someone from Childress Racing, I believe it was, out in North Carolina, take a look at the designs for Jackson Storm.
Wow.
That's
so crazy.
So we do want to get people's input, but we do more than not, we keep it internal, and just because we want to keep things under wraps, we want to keep that lightning in the jar until it's time to release it,
Yeah.
And here I'm just kind of filling in this space here with kind of some greeblies, just kind of letting my pen dance around on this surface here.
And how fun is that? Like, I think because I know that there's a lot of very seasoned folks in the chat right now, but I know there's also a lot of people who are beginning, either just diving into design or making the transition from one kind of design to illustration or painting. And I think it's important just to take a peek here at like these greeble illustrations, like these tiny itty bitty little details. Like, you don't actually have to zoom in and paint all the nuts and bolts here. These are nice, swiping lines and small boxes. And when you are adding detail and suggesting this sort of thing in an illustration, it's kind of like a little bit of impressionism, right? It's just suggesting something that your brain is going to fill in as what you intend. And it's easy, and it's actually kind of fun just to do your little scribbly greebles on the sides of things like that. So if you're getting into illustration and you've started doing like hard surface design or spaceships or robots or whatever, and you find yourself struggling with the small details, sometimes you might be being too hard on yourself about it. You can do small suggestions that leave a big impact.
Yeah, you don't have to know what's going on inside these spaces here. You just need to communicate like, all right, this is some noise. We'll figure that out later. In fact, I was thinking about a Millennium Falcon that maybe is dressed like the space shuttle. Like it's got re-entry tiles on it. Like the entire undersurface of it is just black tile. And then bright white with no greeblies, right? Because that's one of the things, right? Millennium Falcons, it's coming and going out of atmospheres all the time. Like, how does it survive that with all that exposed plumbing on the outside? We'll let that one go for now.
Yeah, let it slide. Don't think too hard about it, okay? Don't ruin it. Also, we had I can't remember who it was, but I spotted a really, really great comment, which was, as you're redesigning this, they've come up with another name for the redesigned Millennium Falcon. So from Millennium Falcon to Century Hawk, which I just think is great. The Century Hawk. I vote for Century Hawk. Sam says #GreebleLife. And Potato has a great question here that I see a lot. And I'm almost worried that I see it a lot. And so I would love to take the opportunity to discuss it with you, Potato. Potato says, can we start pursuing a career in product design in late 20s or in early 30s as a beginner? Can we look up for internships as well? I really think that it doesn't matter how old you are when you want to start designing. And I think that a lot of people feel like if they don't start, if they don't have a story where they're like, yeah, I was drawing since I was 4 and I started doing all this stuff when I was like 13 and I got into the industry when I was 25, like if you don't have a story like that, then it's not meant for you. But I think if you have the desire to pick up a pen or grab a chisel or grab some clay and just make something, then it's meant for you. I really do.
The time to do it was yesterday. Yes. Absolutely. Start it, follow through with it, see if you like it. You enjoy sitting and drawing for hours on end? Do you get lost in your head with the sound effects and the
pew pew
build as you draw? Yeah, it's basically what you're doing. I mean, speaking to that world building question, you know, I'm building my own little world right here as we are. And you know, it's just do you enjoy that stuff? If it gets you through the day, then it'll probably get you through a career.
Yeah.
You know, these days I have to admit it's really hard, because I think back to 96 and the word concept designer was in its infancy. And a mere 3 years later, when I left Lucasfilm and started Pixar, you know, you just saw this explosion of concept design, and all the schools have curriculums now, and in fact there are schools just dedicated to concept design. It's like, wow. I mean, I had to go into product design to get to this place.
To find something that's similar, and what can I use to do that eventually. And you know, and now you can go to a concept art school, which is pretty crazy.
Well, and while it's very easily had, it's also, they're just pouring concept designers out onto the street now, you know, and it's just like, oh man, I'm glad I'm not having to show my portfolio. You know, these days, I mean, I've got a good portfolio, but I haven't had a portfolio in like 25 years. So, you know, just hone your skills, keep that sketchbook every day, fill it with what it is you love to draw, and then get to know people, like on LinkedIn or at, you know, various gatherings. I'm not sure, industry gatherings, I'm not sure where those happen these days, but it is really about your own motivation, and it does help to know people, as I did. I had a friend of mine, George Hall, who actually is an amazing concept designer himself. It was because of him, because I moved out here. He was working at a video game place called Magic Edge, and was jumping up the ILM and needed someone to fill his place at this Magic Edge place. So I came out, filled that position, and then followed him to ILM. And he's also the one who was like, hey man, send your portfolio up to Doug. He's looking at people. And then I got his number through David Nakabayashi, and it all worked out in such an amazing way.
Yeah. But you're right. Like there is such a huge difference in, I guess, the landscape of, you know, you coming into your career and what might happen now. And I say that if you really want to do it, and as Jay says, if you can sit down and draw for hours and you feel like this is the right thing for you, and you have that passion in you to do it, then you should. But it's like, how do you actually go out and find this work, especially as Jay says, where there's so many people who are creating now. I feel like you can get on Instagram and you can see like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who are just posting and creating. And I think that sometimes that can be really discouraging. It's discouraging to me as somebody who's been working in the industry for a decade, you know, and I imagine it would be even more discouraging to people who are just starting out, where they see like this saturation of all of this stuff, or you look things up and you see, you know, things that you want to do already being done. And to that fear, I would offer another idea for how to kind of build your own space. And that is one of the most beautiful things about the difficulty of that, I guess, of there being tons of people and places all over the internet where there's art, is that the internet also provides you with a space to make your own thing.
Yes.
You know, you really can make a Twitter, make, you know, social media, start posting your work and like generate your own little space. It doesn't always have to come from taking your portfolio and posting it. That's how I started my entire career. It's just like, I wanted to have a job doing this stuff. I didn't know where to find a job. And to be perfectly frank, I look back now, I wasn't good enough I wasn't skilled enough to have the jobs I wanted back then, but I created a space for myself and I started posting, and eventually I found my own path to get there. So carve your own space out. You could do that. You can make your own little hidey place and just start filling it full of art. You really can. And people will see it if you put it out there. But if you never put it out there, who's going to know that you do it?
Well, and that's a good thought. I mean, your exposure, you're putting the art in front of the people that need to see it is so much easier these days as well. So, you're fighting the crowds, but you have venues that kind of make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I think we lost your feed there,
but yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It happens. I think that everybody who's ever done art on an iPad has probably experienced this. It's all good. We'll just do full screen and I will go over some more questions while we bring it back.
Awesome. You see it now? Okay. Oh, yeah. How do I get rid of that? Very good. Oh, cool. All right.
Becca's saying, love the art pep talks. That's what we're here for, though, right? Like, really, is share art, talk about art, get other people excited about art, right? I think that's the goal. Spread art.
So we all got to hang together.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you said about like meeting people and knowing people. Like, artists, we're a very unique breed, and sometimes to understand and kind of figure out your own path, talking to other people who've been where you want to be is the best way to do that.
It is. Absolutely it is. For instance, talking to Ralph McQuarrie himself and some of the stuff I got from him was just amazing. Just little bits of truly just great wisdom. Like I said, you guys seeing this? Good.
Yes, I'm loving it too. And I know that we kind of went from an image of the Foamcore you made into this, but it literally looks like you just started from scratch and painted this thing out. And it's just great. And I might actually get into doing, because I have like a whole kit of foam for this purpose that I've just never really kind of dived into. And I think it would be good, especially for me. And I know there's probably some folks in chat like me, where I'm an organic illustrator. I like to paint characters and I like to paint creatures like monsters and stuff. Yeah. Hard surface is not my jam. Me and hard surface we're like an on again, off again kind of friendship. It's very hot and cold. It's not, we're not very solid together. We don't play well. So it might be a good idea for, if you struggle with hard surface, kind of doing that. And it also can give you a really good representation of like perspective. As it actually appears, instead of the guessing of perspective that we sometimes do at the beginning of our journeys. It's just like, I think that's what perspective would do. Let's try that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, perspective, I understand it. In industrial design, you're encouraged to know how to draw things in perspective. But I also kind of just fudge my way through. Like if I started drawing and, if I am just sketching along and it's all awesome and cool, you're just kind of fudging it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can draw your, you can draw your lines that converge back there. But, I would encourage you not to include your convergent lines in the sketch.
Mm-hmm.
That just feels too like elementary to me. I want my convergent lines to be outside the page, living somewhere outside the page so that we're kind of immersed in this scene and not just kind of looking at a perspective 101 sketch.
Yeah.
So, I'll just start drawing something and the perspective will just kind of evolve with it. Sometimes I just won't even think about it. I've just got this idea about layering these shapes together on this ship, whatever. And then, I might have to go back in and correct for perspective or whatnot, just, overlay it or what. But in your sketchbooks, practice perspective, just practice still life, draw the coffee mug on your table, next to the cube, next to the, next to the pyramid, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start kind of understanding all that stuff, you'll start kind of understanding how shapes recede into the distance as well.
Yeah, and then maybe once you pick up, I always say, you learn the basics before you break the rules, sort of things. Because like once you kind of have like a good understanding of how it works, you've done some practice and stuff, then I you don't need to sit down and every time you paint a spaceship, you got to break the ruler out and do all these perfect lines and set up this gigantic grid before you draw something. But once you're more comfortable with it, then you could do, as you say, where you just kind of fudge it, just get in there and start putting it in. But I think that because you have the practice and the experience of having drawn enough spaceships and had to do enough like very particular drawings, that you don't really need them all the time, and you don't have to feel constrained and like chained down to this idea that you have to make that grid and put those lines. And I would imagine that for presentation, when it comes to doing a project, I would much rather see like what you're doing here, where it's just the ship instead of all of your lines over top of it anyways. So
don't let yourself be constrained by perspective. Just draw.
I love to hear it, because perspective, I think that's one of the things just in my art journey that I was always so terrified about. And I got myself into trouble one time because I was practicing perspective. I was like, I practice. And I had been watching all of these concept videos of like Feng Zhu doing all of these like technical ships and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I want to do that so bad. And I don't know why I wanted to do it, because I love space and I love spaceships, but I want to paint monsters. Like I don't want to paint ships. But I got like obsessed for a while of like, I'm going to paint a ship in perspective. And I worked so hard on it. And it was probably the best perspective illustration I've ever done. And I put it in my portfolio. And then what do you know? That's the only thing people asked me for when they wanted to hire me, was like, oh, can you draw me a spaceship like that? So I learned how, number one, how painful it can be to tether yourself to perspective and like work yourself half to death worrying about perspective. And then if you put something in your portfolio that you hated to draw, people are going to ask you for what's in your portfolio. So then I was stuck drawing ships.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
It was awful. It's terrible. Let that be a lesson to you as well. People are going to ask you for a lot of things in your career. Sometimes, if you draw pictures of fruit, there's still going to be some dude out there that's going to ask you if you can design him a website. Not, it's going to happen. But for the most part, people ask you to do for them what's in your portfolio. So make sure the things in your portfolio spark joy, because otherwise you're going to be drawing stuff that does not spark joy forever until you change your portfolio.
Exactly. I'll tell you, before I got the Star Wars gig, I had a couple of months off between my last job and Star Wars. And I had all kinds of jobs that were strange and new. I was working on commercials for the ILM commercials division when it was live back in the day.
Wow.
And they were doing things like, cereal commercials and bread commercials and really unexciting stuff. Like there was a TGI Fridays commercial I worked on where they shot someone on green screen at stage at ILM. And, he's the shrunken guy on the tabletop running around.
Oh, okay.
Those commercials from the 90s, but I worked on those. So, you just got to be prepared to sometimes not do the job that you want to do. And still find the thing that inside that job that makes you happy, or just convince yourself, okay, if I do 3 of these jobs, I can pay the bills and have more stuff in my portfolio and more experience, and it all adds up.
100%. I guess like to amend, I think that like the ultimate goal is doing the work that you're most passionate about. But I think that you should always put some time into, I guess, filling that Batman utility belt with some skills, different things. And I guess if you just want to draw and that's, what you want to do, then you're going to have to do some odd jobs. I don't think there's any getting around that, but like, I have learned over the years how to work on a lot of different projects, because sometimes you just have to take the job and you just have to learn how to do. And I've learned how to do, I've done the old, I'm sure everyone's done this, so I feel like this isn't a bad thing to admit, but I've done the old like, hey Val, can you do this? And I'm like, sure. And then immediately Google it and learn how to do, learn this new skill. And like, you kind of have to gain new tools along the way. And then I would say, like, I have always personally been working towards like eventually getting to the point where I only do what I want. But that doesn't come at the beginning, and you got to work towards that. So sometimes you got to suck it up and draw spaceships, even if you don't like drawing spaceships. Also, just a quick reminder, we've got about 5 minutes left here.
Wow.
Feel free, if you folks have any questions, to post them. I don't know if I'll be able to get through all of them if everyone posts last minute questions, but go ahead and post them. Jay, is there anything that you would really love to tell us or show us or say to us before you leave? And where can we find you after this stream is over? Because I know that you've gained a lot of brand new fans and friends today who would love to chit chat and follow your work after this. So where can we find you?
Let's see. We can find me on Twitter at Jay Shuster. There are some dashes and lines in there as well.
Jeffrey says, no, not only 5 minutes.
Oh,
I love you.
Yes, this is crazy. I'm on Instagram as well. J.S.H.U. Jay. and I'm on LinkedIn. I don't take LinkedIn seriously, so go read my stories on LinkedIn about my first day at the ranch and other jobs that I've had. And
nice.
But really, 2 hours have passed. That's crazy.
That's pretty wild, right?
I hope you all enjoyed these sketches. They're very rough. I do tend to spend more time on them and have more finished work to show directors at times. But again, the industry is so fast and loose. And I really work towards getting as many designs up on the board to get the direction I need to hone it down to a place where everyone feels good about it. It works for the story. The modelers love it. The animators love it. The director loves it. The audience loves it.
Well, Jay, I've got to say, from me to you, it was an absolute honor and pleasure being able to meet you today. I was so excited to do this show. They were right in the chat when they said this must be a dream stream for Val. It really has been. You are delightful. You are wonderfully skilled and talented. It was wonderful to be able to watch you. And I'm sure that the sentiment is the same from folks in the chat. I don't know if you've had the chat up throughout the stream, but let me tell you, it is totally full of people just with positivity and total love and respect and appreciation for you. Everyone has really enjoyed this stream. It's been a total blast. We do have like maybe 3-4 minutes left, so we won't be taking off just yet. So I'll scroll and see if there's any last minute comments. And you can just go ahead and sketch up until the end here. Sam Peterson, our moderator, who is also a wonderful illustrator in his own right, says that this was, he was really happy to be able to moderate for this one. So he's pumped in the chat. Tony Helms giving you some love. Jeffrey was really excited. He says he was not planning even to be here today. And he just kind of stumbled in here while he was working, and he got a lot out of this. And thank you so much for streaming. Kiara saying that she really loved being here. George Carmona says, when can we bring Jay back? That's what I'm saying. Oh, wow. I want Jay here all the time.
That is awesome. Thank you, George. I loved this. I loved it myself. All too often I get bogged down in what I'm doing that may not be the funnest thing at work because, you ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Projects that you don't, maybe not jive with. And then, but, it's good to look back. And this is an instance to look back and say, man, I've done a lot. I can really be proud about this stuff. And so
Mm.
that's what we're all working towards, right? That moment where
Yeah.
we look back and look at the movie that's on the screen or the video game or the comic book or whatever you're doing and just being like, yeah, I did that. That feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's, that's the
I
thing.
think I think that's a really great takeaway. It's just like, we're all kind of working towards the same thing, even if we're working on different kind of projects and doing different work. And just to summarize like a few things, because we've had a lot of really powerful, I think, advice moments from Jay. But I think some of the really important takeaways can be that, and then also not to forget when you snag yourself an opportunity and you find yourself at Skywalker Ranch or some other incredible place that's really special to you, it's natural and normal to feel a little bit of that fear and insecurity, but remember that you got there because you earned it. Don't let that fear ruin a really excellent opportunity for you, or make you feel like you don't deserve it, because you're there for a reason. Don't put star stuff and spaceships in your portfolio if you never want to draw a spaceship. I mean, if you have to, then you have to, but don't do that. And I think there's a lot of other stuff. Watch the replays if you want to check it out again, but we do have to take off here, and I don't want to get cut off. Want to make sure we do a good wrap up, but check out the replays if you want to watch the full show. Thank you all so much for joining us. Jay, as I said, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for hanging out with us today and sharing, and I think that's all for today. Adios, everybody.
Bye.